I've got lots of yeses coming in. Thank you very much. Right. So I've got control at the moment, so we'll go through. So here's my agenda. Apologies for the technical hitch there. So there's the agenda. I've already gone through that, benefits requirements in Sparx EA. So the objective of today's presentation is to talk about, what are the benefits of integrating your requirements with your UML modeling environment. And the integration we're talking about today is the integration between Visual Requirements, where we manage requirements, and Sparx EA, where we can actually build your UML system development models. So before we go into the presentation, I would like to share with you, as a light-hearted note, a Dilbert cartoon, which always makes me smile. Of course, it's of no relevance to anyone on this webinar. I assume and hope, but moving on. So, what is requirements management? If I can come back to my own screen. Requirements management is typically requirements management is a collection of bits of information, or what I term islands of information, which can be captured in a number of forms: Microsoft Word, PowerPoint, Excel, minutes of meetings, and of course nowadays with social media, things like Twitter are even coming into play as vehicles for sharing information. So the problem here, though, with islands of information, I define it as it's a bit of the chaos theory, is that very often those islands of information have got dependent information that there is a dependency, but because they are islands, because they are self-contained documents as part of a project, very often those dependencies are not realized. So it means that a change in one of those islands of information could impact information in one of the others. But of course we actually don't know about that change, or indeed the impact of that change on the project. So the objective here in terms of requirements management is actually taking this, what I term chaos, and actually bringing in, if you like, some sort of order where we start to establish actual connectivity between these bits of information. And the benefit here is that when one piece of information in one of these documents change, then we can start to, because it's connected with actual information in other documents, we can actually start to understand directly and in real time the impact of that change. So, and here you can see the connectivity that's now established. And don't forget here, this is connectivity not at document level. This is connectivity of information at individual statement level. So we can actually start to see that if one sentence or one part of our system description should change, then we can immediately see what impact or what is touched by that change. So it's bringing these autonomous bits of information together and to create some sort of order out of the chaos we've presented above. So let's look at the maintaining focus. So it's about maintaining focus on the stakeholder requirements. Well, before we talk about the drivers and the needs, etc., who are the stakeholders? So typically, from my own experience and from our experience, stakeholders come in many shapes, sizes, and angles. So here you've got is typically very often your most important stakeholder, because obviously you need them to buy into the product that you're developing or you're manufacturing. Marketing is stakeholder, business rules, standards, of course, they're another stakeholder that have an impact on the requirements which affect your system or product development. Regulation, security, and of course finance all play a part and contribute and have an interest in the project. Quality control and maintenance obviously as well. But look at the top of this slide. You've got inputs coming in a number of forms. So you've got your key performance indicator. These are individuals who have a vested interest in this project, these stakeholders, and they will be driven by how they are measured in terms of function within the organization. And then you've got the real challenge. This is the real part where initial requirements management comes into play. You've got to look at what are the real needs, expressed needs, and what are the perceived needs of those stakeholders. And you've got to make some sort of sense out of that to work out what is real, what makes sense, what is technically feasible to actually be able to develop in your system. Taking this step one step further, your stakeholders now, individual statements can be linked to satisfaction arguments or validation. So each stakeholder requirement needs to be verified by. And this is very useful, by the way, because if you verify a stakeholder requirement, you immediately start to view, is that stakeholder requirement testable, is it measurable, and therefore is it actually a requirement. In also tracing down your stakeholder requirements now can link down to your system or project requirements, and in turn those can link across to system test and verification. And going down the next step, your system and project in turn can link to your subsystem and design and implementation requirements. So this is all about traceability of information at individual statement level. The other thing you can bring into play here is opening up a risk register within this environment. So you can actually start to think about what information requirement blocks are going to motivate project risks. And you've got all that information collected in one place, so they can be motivated. In fact, the project risk can be motivated by requirements from any one of those blocks. So we need to maintain here explicit traceability from each stakeholder requirements to how they are satisfied within the project. Taking this one step further now, we're now looking at how they can be satisfied also within Enterprise Architect, in this case Sparx Enterprise Architect. And I've drawn a couple of circles where you'd expect to see this information being captured. So at the top level, your stakeholder requirements are still typically caught in a requirements tool. Very often people use Microsoft Word and Excel to do this. They are what I term classic islands of information, which doesn't lend itself naturally to having connection, direct linking to how those requirements are satisfied in the project development. Then in the lower part of this screen, you notice that we start to move into the realms of how we model those requirements, in this case using Sparx Enterprise Architect, and how we actually need to integrate these two bits of information together to maintain real-time synchronization between the textual statements of requirements and the model or the diagrammatic view of that same information. So let's talk about now the requirements challenge, and why do we need to link your textual requirement information with your system architect model artifacts. So the challenge here is to understand stakeholder expectations through a collection of grammatical statements alone. And that really is a challenge, because the bottom line is some people in organizations are really good in the world of words. Some people, however, may be not so good at words and are much better representing their thoughts, their creativity, their ideas in the form of models or pictures. And the reality is we've got to engage the strengths of all contributors to a project based on their preferred way of communicating. And don't forget, you know, we talk about grammar and grammatical statements. Here I am talking in English to many of you, where English is not your first language, and I can see already from the attendees that is very much the case. So sometimes grammar alone not a strong vehicle. So interpretation, words alone can be open to, I'm going to be kind and say reinterpretation, but sometimes that can be also reflected as misinterpretation of the requirements. And also now looking at completeness, so describing or trying to describe a sequence of events through words alone can introduce human error and incompleteness. So it's that ability to be able to translate from the textual description to a sequence of events, which very often are much easier to interpret through a model or a picture. So the use of modeling techniques can be a very strong vehicle to elaborate and clarify the stakeholder and client needs in a way that can be visualized to support the text. And then it's important, if we're going to move from the world of text into the world of models, that we continue to maintain explicit traceability from the stakeholder expectations to the system solution and right throughout the design lifecycle, providing, if you like, real-time links between the world of words and the world of pictures. Bottom line, though, is we can't, much as some of us would like to walk away from the world of words and describing everything in text, we can't walk away from it, because at the end of the day, when you start to deal with lawyers and accountants, if you like, they still prefer to describe information in the world of words. This is typically still the basis on which many contracts are formed as a critical description of the contracted project. And the deliverables, projects need to produce fully formatted documents and metrics reports at any time to track progress, document the project deliverables, and this typically, ideally, needs to be done in real time. Very often, if you do this as a manual process separate to the design, that can also be very time consuming. So the benefits of modeling requirements, there are many, as we all know, or people certainly I'm guessing on this webinar will know, there are many modeling standards that further reinforce the power of modeling. So here I've got the OMG for the UML modeling standard. You've got SysML, UPDM, TOGAF for the commercial modeling environment, and then you've got the architecture frameworks to support military based systems. So all of these standards recognize the benefits of through-life system to requirements elicitation, and also having a simulation-based acquisition advocates the use of a central cohesive model for developing the system objectives from which the lower level requirements are actually derived, and that's a very powerful vehicle for deriving those lower level requirements. So how do we actually now start to manage this project information? So here's a good example. This is a view actually in Visual Requirements itself of what we call a block diagram, and it actually shows you the linkage that we've established between various documents. So you've got the stakeholder requirements satisfied by your system requirements, and the system requirements are then divided into two types, either functional or non-functional. Modeling is very good at drawing out the functional requirement information. It's not so good at dealing with the non-functional requirements and how you handle those types of performance indices. And that's where very often you need to capture those in the form of words. But the functional requirements and looking at this interaction between requirements plays a very critical role in deriving the lower level requirements. So here I've got an example of requirements. We've got a functional requirement that I've described here. It's battery types. The priority here is defined as low, and the current status of that requirement is it's being reviewed. What we typically do now is we'll take that requirement into Sparx EA, and here's an example. You can see now you've got the battery types again. It's now formed a diagram or a model showing how that requirement will interact with ultimately the user, in this case the listener, and the charge of the battery. So the power here is how I take those requirements and obviously now how we convert them into use cases and link them down into explicit links down into information which is captured here in Enterprise Architect. But of course the link can't only go in one direction. It's showing the synchronization here from requirements into the models, but of course we also have to go back in the other direction of going from the models. As you develop the models, how do they link back to the original requirements? And are we doing anything in the lower level models which is going to suddenly make us non-compliant with what the stakeholder originally demanded? So you can now start to see the value and the importance of maintaining this traceability from the textual description of the system as defined by the stakeholders down into the more detailed description of the system as characterized in your system model. And this is traceability to the functional and physical design elements running in both directions. So at this point, somehow if I can deal with the technology, I'm going to hand over back to Jose, who will actually show you the demonstration of the new integration we've established between Visual Requirements and Sparx EA. So I need guidance on how I actually change presenter. Are you there, Jose?
Yes, I am, Paul.
You're going to have to guide me how I change presenter. Stop showing my screen.
No, no problem.
Great.
Okay.
Yep.
So hopefully you can start watching my screen right now. There we go. So I'm going to continue with Paul's presentation, and I'm going just to demo and just show you a bit of this new integration. First of all, allow me to apologize again for the technical problems that we have got at the beginning of the webinar with the sharing of the different screens that take us some time. So what I'm going to do, or what I'm going to show you right now, is how we can, following what Paul has just shown us, start with, in this case, with a Visual Requirement project and start synchronizing elements from Visual Requirement to Enterprise Architect, work into Enterprise Architect, bring information back, and so on. There are, of course, different scenarios that we can present when synchronizing these two tools. But in this case, what I'm going to do, allow me to show you using one of the diagrams available into Visual Requirement, is just what I'm about to show. Just a second, it's loading. My idea for this demo, for this project, is it's the following. Basically, we are going to start working with our requirement into Visual Requirement. In this project, in this specific project, as you can see, we have defined, there we go, we have defined two levels of requirements. We have got user requirements and we have got system requirements. Take into account that this is just a customization that we have done of a specific project, but we can have as many levels as needed, or maybe only one level. Maybe we may have 3, 4. We have component requirement, we have subsystem requirement, I don't know. In this case, I'm just using user requirement and system requirement. System requirements are classified into functional and non-functional. So all the requirements information, the user requirements, the system requirements, are going to be stored into a Visual Requirement. And what I'm about to show you, what I'm about to demo you, is how we can create a couple of new system requirements out of some existing user requirements, which is the idea of my project. We have got user requirements that are more or less close to the user language. So we will use those for creating more technical requirements, our system requirements, just a proposal of the solution. And after that, when we have, let's say, a stable version of those system requirements that has been validated or approved, what we are going to do is just jump into the integration and see how we can automatically synchronize those system requirements with our empty project into Enterprise Architect. Okay, so I have got here this Enterprise Architect project. Let me show you also. It's been opening, just a second. Here it is, with just a couple of models, a requirements model and a use case view. What I'm going to do is just create the system requirements into Visual Requirements and synchronize them in a tailored way, I will show you afterward, with the requirements model into Enterprise Architect. After that, we will be able to create some use cases there in the modeling tool. We can put them into a diagram. We can characterize them with scenarios, whatever we need. And also, if needed, we can bring back information from Enterprise Architect to Visual Requirement to populate this use case block or this use case chapter that I have defined here into Visual Requirement, like Visual Requirement, using requirements, using their own tools, and your modelers or your designers are going to be able to work with the use cases into a modeling tool like Enterprise Architect. They both will have synchronized and updated information that they can use to work with. Okay, so like I was saying, what I'm going to do is just jump to the requirements view into Visual Requirements that will probably resemble to the diagram that I have just shown you a moment ago. As you can see, this view is just like a Microsoft Word view. I have got this navigation tree with the 3 type of elements that I have got in my project. I have got user requirements classified by those 4 chapters: marketing, business rules, standards, and customer requirements. I've got also the system requirements classified to functional, non-functional. And finally, I've got the use cases, which right now are empty. So, like I said at the beginning, what I'm going to do is just start by creating some system requirements into visual requirement. Okay. So for that, let me just, in order to do it faster, I'm going to, instead of write down the requirements, I'm going to just copy them from this little notepad document I've got in here. So what I'm going to do is just, for example, just picture that what I'm going to do is just describe this customer requirement called preference or called US hospital, I don't know, for example, this one. And I'm just about to create some system requirements out of these user requirements. So for that, I'm going to just copy the properties from this document. So I'm going to put here the name of this user requirement, and I'm going to copy here the description. I'm going to use those 2 properties, and then I will play with the attributes also. Okay, take into account that all these properties and attributes I have defined in my project are, of course, fully customizable by the users. Okay, so now I'm going to create a new one. I will create 3 or 4 requirements. Just we'll try to do it as fast as possible. There we go. Just a very simple set of requirements, defining what users expect for managing some users into our application we are developing. Okay, so just create user, modify user, edit user, how that is going to work into the tool. Okay, so just put the description in here, and just one more to go. There we go. And for this one, I'm going just to put here something in the description, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so just as simple as that, I have created some requirements that you can find here under the system requirement chapter. Okay, I haven't categorized them as functional or non-functional. It's fine for the purpose of this demonstration. So once I have created the requirement, what I'm going to do is just well, I can modify them. I can play with them as I want. I can change their, for example, their status or any property, because we can configure that these properties are also synchronized, or even use them as a filter. For example, only synchronize those requirements that are already approved or that are, I don't know, yeah, probably approved. Only those that have been approved, and don't synchronize those that are ready for review or rejected or whatever. So once I finish with them, I can check the requirements in using the change management mechanism that comes with Visual Requirements, so it's control tool. Okay, and using this mechanism, we have just created the first version of my requirements. Okay, so now that this version has been created, I will be able to synchronize my requirement with Enterprise Architect. How exactly? Allow me to show you that. I have got here the console or the management center for the integration, and from here I am able to define the mapping between the elements into Visual Requirement and Enterprise Architect, and also the other way around. This and this is really important, this mapping, this synchronization is fully customizable. You as an administrator will be able to tailor every aspect of the integration, so you can specify which information is going to be synchronized. For example, only those elements contained into this project, only those elements contained into this specific chapter, into this specific section. For example, in my case, only the system requirements are going to be synchronized. We can even apply more complex filter, like I was saying. For example, only those that are in the status approved, okay, and in a closed version, for example. That can be configured, and also we can configure exactly how the mapping is going to be performed field by field. So as you can see, that the name into visual requirement is going to be synchronized with the name into the element in Enterprise Architect. The description is going to go to the nodes field, which is a field available into Enterprise Architect for all the elements. I'm going to locate all the elements into the, if you remember, into my Enterprise Architect project, I have got two different packages, the use case one and the requirements one. So I'm going to put all the requirements into the requirements package, of course. And also I can configure the type of element that I'm going to create into Enterprise Architect, requirements, use cases, actors, whatever. And also the attributes that I will synchronize. In this case, I'm not synchronizing traceability, but it is also possible to can help me to perform the synchronization, or to create the use cases out of the system requirements can be synchronized automatically. Okay. We can also configure how often this synchronization is going to be executed. Okay, we can say something like every 1 minute perform the integration, or every 1 hour just check for changes into both tools in order to perform the integration. In this case, I have configured this integration to be executed more or less, I think it was like 1 each hour, 1 each half an hour, something like that. So I'm just, sorry, I'm just trying to get it synchronized, to get my elements synchronized into Enterprise Architect, but probably it's going to take some time in order to have those requirements into my project. You can see that right now I only have this example requirement. So I will need some time in order to synchronize all the elements. Hopefully we will be able to see something in a moment about this synchronization if we have got the point, but if not, we will have to wait a bit longer. Okay. There is another requirement right now called sample 3, which is a requirement that I have created just a moment ago. But those that I have created, the create user, require file, delete user, and edit users, are still pending to be synchronized. As I was saying, we can configure how often the synchronization is going to be executed, and in this case I have configured that to be executed once each 30 minutes or something like that. Okay. But anyway, the important thing is that once we have got the requirements into Enterprise Architect, we can start creating use cases out of those requirements. And just in the same way, we can configure how those use cases can be also synchronized back to visual requirement if needed. Okay, so we can create a trace then with the system requirements that are the source for that use case, that those use cases are solving, and after that we can synchronize those use cases, or at least part of those use cases information. In this case, as you can see in the mapping, what I'm going to synchronize is just the use case name, the use case description, and the traces, which are here in the issues relationship between the use cases and the system requirement. So I will be able to get the result, the use case that someone has created into the modeling tool. I will be able to see that use case into the corresponding section into visual requirement. Of course, that will require some time because I'm not executing that every minute or every 5 minutes, just in order to have, because that will be too much. Okay, that won't make sense. Usually, you just configure it to be executed, I don't know, once each day or maybe once each hour, whatever. It's not a real-time synchronization, but it's just a synchronization that is going to be executed whenever you configure it to be. So it requires some time. So let's see if I have been able to already synchronize the requirements. So I will have to show you that. But as we have got this problem at the beginning of the webinar, we are running out of time, and I don't know if I will be able to display how the requirements has been created, or we will have to wait a bit longer, and we don't have time for that. Let me just refresh the project and see if, apart from those two samples that I have created, I will be able to show you something else. No, not yet. Okay, so we will need, as I was saying, to wait a bit longer in order to review all these requirements that I have created here into Enterprise Architect. Okay, we won't have time for bringing the use cases back into Visual Requirement, but at least I would love to show you the requirements that I have just created, so you can see that the integration, of course, is for sure working. Okay, just let's try to force an execution, but probably it's not going to be executed until the time it has come for you to be executed. So let's see if we can wait a couple of minutes for the elements to be synchronized, and if not, there is no problem, because what we will be doing is just after this webinar, in a couple of days probably, we will be uploading this webinar itself to YouTube or any other video platform, and along with that we will be posting a complete recording of round-trip synchronization with requirements and use cases, so you can see that it's working perfectly. But here in real time it's just more complicated, because it's been executed once in a while, once every few minutes. So let's see what I can do.
So go through the actual user configuration of the schema mapping.
Beg your pardon?
Go through the schema mapping in OpsHub.
Yeah, we have been seeing that just a moment ago.
Yeah, got it, yeah.
In the meantime, I'm going to just perform maybe some changes here in order to also trigger the integration, because I would love to show you that, but I don't know if we will have enough time for this. Just give me just 1 minute, and if not, no problem, I will just share the video with you afterward that we can use for see that it's working perfectly. Just in a few days we will be releasing that. But in the meantime, let's see if I can just display everything that I have been doing into Enterprise Architect also. Just very quickly, I'm going to reload my Enterprise Architect project. Just a second. Okay, so you can see that one of the requirements is already here, the create users. The other ones are being synchronized. It will take a couple of minutes for them to be here, but they will eventually be synchronized. As you can see, I have synchronized the requirements name, the requirements description, also the target values that I configure, like for example the status which was reviewed. As I mentioned before, we can configure only those elements that are approved, can be synchronized, something like that, but anyway, we can perform the mapping of the different fields. If I remember well, the priority, of course, it's also map with the Enterprise Architect, so allow me to show you that also. The priority is an attribute that is contained inside the element, so we can see that here instead of in the target value section. So here you can see that the priority was low, so it has a low priority. Okay, so this is just one of the 4 requirements that we have created, but if we wait long enough, all of them will be here. As you can see, I haven't done anything, just wait for them to be synchronized. And also, that will happen in the other way around. So I don't want to keep you waiting longer, so finish with the demo part here, because I don't want to keep you waiting for that. As I was saying, we will be recording a video with the whole synchronization, and in that video you can just click on forward in order to go directly to the synchronization or whatever, so you don't have to be waiting here like you are right now. So what I'm going to do right now is just go back to the slides and just hand over to Paul. Paul, are you here?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to give you control on my computer, so you can just finish with the presentation.
Lovely. All right. Thank you very much, Jose. It's, can I do that?
Yes, give me a second.
Okay. That's better. Yeah, your screen seems to put bits of black on the screen. I don't know
let me hide this here.
Oh yeah, it's your control panel for
That's it. I am hiding it.
Yes, that's better. Okay.
I think that
Good.
you can now control it.
Thank you. Good. So, so the idea here is that we support the traceability lifecycle from, on the left-hand side of the screen, the stakeholder requirements, if you like, the statement of need, and maintaining this traceability through different documents and different parts of the project management process until we end up with a view of the solution. If I can go to add the next build, yes. So we move from what I term a documented view, moving it from the as specified system to the as delivered system. And it's important that we maintain the documented view ultimately of the system as it's representing what is delivered rather than what was specified. Because as we all know, during the life cycle of a project, then the requirements will change. So moving forward, benefits of tool support. Well, I've got some revelations for you here. And the first one is that, contrary to some beliefs, the use of tool support does not suddenly increase your IQ or your intelligence. I'm really sorry for that, and I apologize, but that's the facts. However, but also information traceability from the textual requirement to how you represent those requirements in your system models, and of course back again. And that's really important. And the actual models can be used as a vehicle for deriving those lower level requirements for completeness, and also to expose any shortfalls that may come out of the stakeholder requirements. They can help in evaluating your design solutions, and they can be used as a vehicle for eliciting and elaborating and communicating your understanding of your stakeholder requirements and expectations. So just in very brief conclusion, so primary stakeholders still need to communicate their requirements in the world of words, because quite frankly, most of your stakeholders, that will be the environment that they are most familiar with. They are not so, very often stakeholders are not going to be would not feel comfortable trying to review what you're doing in a UML or a Sparx EA model. They typically work in the world of text. So while UML based models may be good for design engineers, we still need to bridge the communication gap back to the stakeholders. We still need to publish products and projects with the stakeholder requirements to provide real-time metrics reporting on the current fulfillment status of your project objectives or your product development objectives. Modeling in Sparx EA allows us to derive and validate the lower level system requirements and the operational functions, and it allows you to look at interaction diagrams and sequencing diagrams, which are very difficult to visualize just in the world of text alone. And finally, we effective requirements management to manage and communicate the impact of change on any one requirement and how it may impact requirements in other documents or other parts of the system. So the world of words, though, however, is still essential as a basis for contracts and system specification, and I'm going to say legal interpretation of the system you deliver. And with that, that's all from our presentation. We have some time now, 5 minutes or so, to answer any questions. So if you have any questions, please feel free to write them now. And we've got a couple of questions here on the screen there. Can you see those, Jose? Hello, Jose? Yes.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yes. So we've got one question. So do you want to try and take on those two questions?
Yes, of course. Yeah, someone is asking about the synchronization that is taking a lot of time. Well, that's not completely true. We have been waiting for the synchronization to be executed, but it's not just that it's taking a lot of time. Instead of that, I have configured the synchronization to be executed once every few minutes, instead of one each minute, something like that. So what we waited was for the synchronization to be executed, but not we weren't waiting for it to finish. We were waiting for it to start, let's say.
Yeah. So typically, by the way, the synchronization happens as a background task and would not normally even be seen by the users. Obviously, on a demonstration, 1 or 2 minutes seems like a long time, but the actual synchronization time normally is much faster.
Mm-hmm. Also, there is another question here. Oh, by the way, before jumping to the question, you can see that now all the requirements are synchronized. Okay, and like I was saying before, it's not that the synchronization take too long to finish. It takes long in this case to be executed because I have configured it to be executed one every few minutes, not one each minute. Okay, so all the requirements that I created a moment ago are now here with their corresponding description and the corresponding fields that I have mapped. Okay. Also, there is another question about what if the project, the number of requirements is really big. Well, that shouldn't be also an issue because take into account that doesn't matter that it's not related with the number of elements. You have to also take into account the number of elements that you are going to synchronize. That means that not all the elements in the project probably are going to be synchronized. Only those that are system requirements and only those that are probably in a completed or an accepted or something like that in a given status. So only those requirements will be synchronized. If you have got like 1,000 of those requirements, of course it will take more time than synchronizing 4 or 5, but it's going to be the synchronization that is going to take some time. Not like in this case that we have been waiting for it to be executed, not for it to finish.
And then just as an addition on that, we have a customer already using this integration. They've currently got just over 2,000 requirements running on the integration, and that seems to be working fine. So you've got another.
Yes, I've got another question asking about the traceability between use cases and requirements from EA be synchronized to visual requirement. Yes, of course. In fact, cycle, in which we will be showing that in a few days, in that video you will be able to see that, of course, once we have the requirements in here, I can create a new use case. I can relate that use case with an existing or with several existing requirements. And after that, I can synchronize that use case back to visual requirements along with the traceability to the requirements, which is, of course, what I would like to analyze into visual requirements, see exactly how my system requirements are being fulfilled by means of use cases. So the traceability information can be also synchronized, of course. In fact, it's really important information to synchronize. Probably it wasn't very clear here in the mapping because it's just on a small section, but it's an option also to synchronize the traceability when exporting or importing. In this case, I haven't exported any traceability because just moving a couple of system requirements. But when bringing back the use cases, I will, of course, bring back the traceability with them.
And it's also worth pointing out that what traces to what is entirely user configurable. So to support your process, you define what requirements, what attributes in those requirements specifically link to what elements in Sparx EA. You have full control over that, obviously in both directions, and that's an important factor. So it can support basically anyone's process. The integration does not dictate to you what links with what. You define what you want.
That's it. Not only for the traceability, but for everything. Maybe I start creating, I don't know, along with the use cases, actors and other artifacts that I will need for my modeling, but I don't think that they are useful into the requirements tool. So
you've got one more question that you refer to there. How do you manage?
Okay, how do you manage deliveries? That's a good question. That probably it's not enough with 1 minute for answering, but we can use several mechanisms for that. Yeah, like you're saying, by means of tag, probably not real tag into visual requirement, but attributes or different fields. Also by means of baselines, we can just map, let's say, a baseline with a release or with a delivery. So everything contained into a given baseline is going to be into a delivery, and we can use also that for the For filtering asynchronization, for example, only those elements belonging to a certain baseline would be exported, so you can just start modeling them or something like that. Okay, I will have loved to have more time to answer this, but take into account that yeah, tag is an option, also baselines and so on.
Okay. Lovely. Well, I think at that point, apologies, we have run out of time. Thank you very much for your attention and also the questions that came in. We very much appreciate those. Let's say we will be publishing a video, and on that video we hopefully will demonstrate a much faster synchronization speed. And with that, I know your time is precious. Thank you for attending, and we will be following up with you